Hi guys, welcome back in my channel. I am doing this video after a long time. So this is an interesting case study. So I have recently faced this scenario and I thought I would share with you guys. I hope you will like my videos. Thank you very much. Let's get started. So from the title you see that uh, Datapump export from active standby database. What do you mean? So when we say active standby database, so you must have already uh, have that knowledge that active standby stays in read-only mode. So you can only query the database, so no transaction, no DML operation is allowed. So when you try to export from the standby database, the very first thing will happen is it will try to create a master table which will be used to store all the metadata required for the export. So I will walk you through how to do that uh, from the active standby database. Okay, so uh, in our environment, we had a job from ODI, Oracle Data Integrator. What it used to do is it will execute some queries which will create external table from the database. Using this complex query, it will fetch all the data and those data will be imported back into a data warehouse system. So this process used to take every day 6 to 7 hours, and in that SQL you can see there is a table called reading which was very large, around 3 terabytes of data. So the business challenge is not only to export from the standby database, because our goal was to reduce load from the primary database. So how do I achieve this requirement? Okay, so this was my high level solution. So in the left hand side you can see a database which related to metadata management, and in the right hand side we have a data warehouse database, and in between we have a database, staging database. So the idea is we have to initiate a filter data pump export of each table involved in the query using a database link, and once export is done you import those tables in a data warehouse database into a different schema. From there they can, the application team can run some ETL to load the data from those tables to actual table. So it it looks very straightforward, right? But it is not that much straightforward, because as I mentioned earlier, the reading table is very big, which is around 3 terabytes of database. So I have to export the subpartition, because reading table is partitioned and then subpartitioned with some key column. So I have to export the subpartition which matches the filter criteria used in the query. Okay, so I'll go some more level deeper in the next slide. Okay, now my thought process starts. So if you go back to the first part, I have just tried to use the conditional statement, at least from the table name and the where clause. So let's focus on that. So I have highlighted for the trading table what are the conditions you have to satisfy. Basically there are two conditions. So one with the end time column. So for that end time column you need to select only 26 months of old data which satisfied this, which is being satisfied using this add underscore months function. I repeat again. So there are two filters, one with end time column of reading table where you are selecting only 26 months of data and which we are achieving using add underscore months. Okay. The next filter is on reading group alternate, sorry, on the next filter is reading group alternate key. So you can see that reading group alternate key is a common column for reading group and reading table. Okay, so basically we have to satisfy these two conditions, then only we will get filtered data. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the visualization of my reading table. So reading table is first range partitioned by end time column, and again it is subpartitioned hash partitioned by node ID column. But we have a primary key, node ID, end time, and reading group alternate key. Okay, and reading group also has a, as I said, uh, reading group alternate key. So what I did in this case, I try to select from subpartition which has matching reading group alternate key from reading group. So basically I created a loop which will go through each subpartition, and if it finds the matching reading group alternate key which we are getting from reading group, then we are selecting that subpartition and only the filtered data of that subpartition. So I hope I am clear up to this point. Going to next slide. Now, so the below is the piece of code which I have written using a PL SQL, and this is a dynamic SQL. So you can see that I am trying to select from the reading table with the subpartition. Subpartition name is a variable which will come through a loop, and basically I'm trying to select those reading group alternate key which falls in this condition. What is that condition? Select reading group alternate key from reading group where we have some start date and end date. It falls in this. So first internally it will fetch all the reading group alternate key from reading group, and then it will match with the subpartition of that. If that count is greater than 0, then only you have to export that subpartition with subquery. So the logic is moment it finds that subpartition, it will be exported using DBMS Datapump API. So these are the code block. I am not giving you the whole code because this is just a case study, and I cannot share everything, every single line code here. So just a glimpse how I did it. The first, the operation is you have to define h1 variable, and then you have to open using dbms datapump.open. Your operation is export, job mode is stable, remote link I am passing as an argument in the procedure, and the job name is, just for sake of simplicity, subpartition name underscore export. Then you are adding the dump file name using dbms datapump.add file, and then you are adding log file name, and then like file type is varying, you can see here. And also you have to add data filter. What is the data filter? So for me, I have to use the partition. So that is partition list, and this is just a partition name and corresponding partition name, and the table name and the schema name, and also the metadata. What the metadata? You have to add in, tell the BMS data pump what is your schema and what is your table. And once that is done, then you can apply your subquery. And subquery is nothing but when you are selecting data from that subpartition, just apply what we are writing here. I mean to say the reading group alternate key. On that subpartition, you are selecting those reading group alternate key which falls within reading group. Okay, moving into next slide. So how to monitor the export? Okay, there are several ways. You can just use your DBA Datapump jobs where state equal to executing. Also from the server, you can graph for the current date and the log. And if you have created a job log table, there you can just dump your message, what time you are starting, what time it failed, what time it completed, everything. So entire export process in my case finished between 3 and 4 hours. So how import was done? So import was done reading export job tables metadata. This is very important. This is very, very important. So while you are importing, how will you get the dump file name? How will you know which table space you have to dump? I mean, you know which table space you have to dump, but you don't know on which table space those objects are belong. So there is a parameter where you can say that don't drop the master table so that you can read it later for your import. That's what I did. So same way I created a procedure where you can pass the argument, table name, subpartition name, remap schema, remaps table space. Okay. So import is also done using DBM's data pump. So you can see that add file and for dump file name, and you can remap the schema. You can exclude the expression, like you don't need a grant, trigger, or statistics. If you want to just uh, make the operation faster, you don't need the statistics, because finally those tables will be used by some other ETL tool to import into actual table. And import process finished between 1 and 1.5 hours. That was very fast. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have any feedback and suggestion, please reach out to me in below email address, debjitiman@yahoo.com. Thank you very much.